friends, welcome back to Whiskey and Whit. I'm Whitney and today's video is full of a ton of Easter DIY decor inspiration, so stay tuned. To get you started this year for Easter season 2021, I've compiled some of my best tips, tricks, and projects so that you can get a head start on your DIY projects. And before we hop in, a huge thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get started.
So we'll start with a super easy project, and this is a Dollar Tree DIY. This Easter egg garland, I was inspired by something I saw last year at Michael's, and it was way more expensive than how I recreated it. So for this, you're just gonna grab some of a Dollar Tree's foam eggs, and these are actually just little ornaments for an Easter tree. And then I also grabbed a needle, something long enough to go through the eggs, and then some Dollar Tree jute twine. I went through, pulled off the little hangers, they just pop right out, and then I used my needle and thread to go directly through the center of the foam egg. You need to use a little bit of pressure, but if you go right down the center, you're good to go. I decided what color pattern I wanted to do, and then I strung it as long as I needed it to be to go across my mantle. And that's it. Super easy. It's nice to add a touch of pastel. Also, if you would rather have this be white, you could easily spray paint it. And also, if you don't want the glitter getting everywhere, you can just take it outside and spray it with one coat of some hairspray, and that will do the trick.
Before this next project, I wanted to share a little bit more about Skillshare, who sponsored today's video. I've talked about them before, but they are an online learning community that have a ton of video classes that you can do at your own pace and really level up your skills in a variety of different things. They've got things on calligraphy, photography, home decor, creative writing, and different business skills if you want to use those for more of your work life. I've loved being able to dive more into Skillshare as I've shared it with you guys. Their classes are a combo of both video lessons as well as a class project at the end. I recently did a class called Style Your Space with Emily Henderson over at HGTV's Design Star. I really liked that and went back and watched some of the modules again as I was restyling my home for winter. So Skillshare is under $10 a month if you do an annual subscription, and it's specifically curated for learning, meaning there's no ads with that subscription. The first 1,000 people to use the link down in my description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. Now let's hop back into the projects.
Now let's make this really cute neutral buffalo check Easter sign. This one was inspired by a Walmart sign that I could not find in store last year, so I remade it. And the first step was just to remove any of those 3D pieces, flip it over, and paint the back with white chalk paint. Now you can either paint your own buffalo check or you can stick some like scrapbook paper on there, but for my buffalo check, I did vertical stripes in gray, and I just used some thicker painter's tape and peeled that off. Then after I did my vertical stripes on the sign, I did my horizontal ones just using a piece of painter's tape to kind of make sure everything was spread out evenly. And I've got a video that's a lot slower of a process for buffalo check, so I will link that down below if you want to check it out. Now before I painted, you saw me quickly mark the tape, and I just marked where the original pieces of tape were, just so then that way I knew where to put my painter's tape back. Then once that's dry, take your 2 long pieces of tape, put it back where it was, and paint the openings black. That is basically you telling the sign where the gray lines overlap, and that's where with buffalo check your black squares need to be. Then once that dries, it's time to make our little scroll in the center. So I just used some Dollar Tree craft paper, measured and cut it to size, and I just went off the particular sign that I have, but whatever size Dollar Tree sign or whatever sign you're really using, you want to measure that and give yourself about 3 to 4 inches on either end, because you're going to wrap it around like a scroll. So you don't want it to be just the exact size. You want to give yourself a little bit of extra space at the top and the bottom. So this is all I'm doing here, is just going through, making straight lines, and then cutting so that my pieces are the size that I need. Then I cut on my Cricut a little decal that said "Every Bunny Welcome," and this was directly inspired by that sign from Walmart. I will leave links down below to both the original videos as well as where you can find free cut files if they're available. Then I just took some transfer tape and took my little design and put it onto the scroll. If you're worried that your transfer tape is going to be too sticky, you can just stick it to your pants. You can stick it to, the table just to get rid of some of that initial stickiness, and that will help so you don't rip your paper when you peel it back. So then once everything was on my sign, I took some of these Dollar Tree dowel rods and used just some hot glue to wrap the top and the bottom so it looked like a scroll. And I lucked out, I didn't have to cut the dowel rods. I was just able to use the size that they came in. Dollar Tree has 12-inch ones, and I believe these are 8-inch, so that's the size that I used. And that is why you're going to want your extra space. So then once that was done, I just took some more hot glue, I stuck it to my sign, I added some jute twine to finish off the look, and then I also added a little bow just to give it a little bit more matchy-matchy with stuff I already have in my house. The last step was to put back on some jute twine to hang it, and voila! I absolutely love this sign. It's a little bit smaller than my inspo sign, which actually worked out perfect for me because I was looking for something smaller for that area in my house. I really like incorporating both neutrals and pastels for my Easter decor. Up next are these really fun little carrot beads. I just used some leftover beads, some jute twine, and also some Whit dye to make the beads orange. I started out by creating a little faux needle and thread situation, so I just take a piece of tape and I wrap it around the end of my jute twine, and that helps me feed it through all of the beads. Now, this particular set came from Michael's and it had a variety of different sizes. So to get that carrot shape, you just want to start with a large bead and then go down to small. So I ended up doing 5 per carrot. You could potentially not cut them apart until you dye them, so you just have one piece to dye, but it's really up to you. So then once all of my little carrots were ready to be turned orange, I followed the instructions on the Whit dye in a glass container, used my gloves, stirred it up with an old paintbrush, and used as much dye as I needed to get the color that I was desiring. Then I just took some tape, I dropped my carrots in and stuck them to the side of the bowl just so then that way none of them fell off the jute twine or went to the bottom of the bowl. And I followed the instructions. I'm pretty sure I did about 20 minutes in the Whit dye, but the longer you leave it, the deeper the color will get. Once you are all good with the color, then I took them out, put them on a little paper towel, and I made sure to rinse them off so I got rid of all the dye so that it was not going to come off on my fingers or anything. So here's what they looked like, and then I decided to add the top of the carrot with some jute twine. So you can either do green jute twine, which Dollar Tree sells. I just made a quick little tassel, or you could also use the brown, regular color jute twine for a more rustic look. And here's what those different options look like. These are super fun for different tiered trays, for different vignettes, and they're kind of a fun take on the farmhouse bead that go really great with Easter decor. And here's another Dollar Tree DIY, this white buffalo check crate. So I created this with some St. Patrick's Day signs, but you can find these square signs really at any Dollar Tree. It'll just say probably something different. I also grabbed some of these create your own ornaments in various shapes, as well as some floral foam and some spring greenery and flowers. So the first thing I did was take apart my signs, and I removed the hanging stuff from the back and I popped the front part out of the signs. I was really just interested in that outer frame, and you can discard 3 of the 4 and then keep 1 for the bottom of your crate. Then I also just had some scrap wood on hand, but you can use Jenga pieces or popsicle sticks. I just wanted to have something for the inside of the box so when I glued it together, it wasn't as flimsy. Then I went through and painted the outside of every sign as well as my little pieces to put on the inside. Everything I painted white. You could do whatever color that you want. And then I also made sure to paint the back of my sign, so that could be the bottom. Then it was time to assemble, so I glued the bottom on so all of the white pieces were on the outside, and then I lined up all of my other pieces. I used my wood pieces that I painted, and I just did it at a diagonal, so it kind of looked like barn doors, kind of that farmhouse look, just with some hot glue, stuck it together, and it stayed together really well. So then once my crate was decorated, then I decided to do some buffalo check items on the outside. You could paint these whatever color that you want. You could cover them with scrapbook paper. You could have your kids color on them. There are a ton of different options, but I decided to do buffalo check because you guys know me. So I decided to do buffalo check in a pink and a purple. So for this method, you're going to want a white, your color of choice, and then you're going to want to mix white and the color of your choice so you have a middle color. So I first taped off my pieces and painted it with a mixture of white and, in this case, purple. Then I did my horizontal lines, painted it with the same white and purple mixture. But this is a similar situation as we did for the welcome sign up front. The only difference is instead of gray and black, you're using a light purple and a dark purple. So think of it as a light black and a dark black, light purple, dark purple. So then once all of those were painted, I went through and just hot glued them to the outside of my little crate. The final step was to make a just little arrangement, so I cut apart my Dollar Tree florals and filled in the inside. I absolutely loved how this turned out, and you would not guess that it was from Dollar Tree signs. You could customize this look really for any season, and also if you're not big into Easter decor or the pastel colors, you could easily just switch out the different items for each season or just do the white crate on its own. So this project cracks me up every time I see it because I made this as part of our first Dollar Tree mystery box collab. And it's really funny because I love how it turns out. I love the piece of decor, but it came from something I didn't know how to use. So it was one of these fairy gardens that come from Dollar Tree, and I started by cleaning out all of the little grass on the inside, and you can just wipe that out. A little sandpaper, a little soap and water, it comes right out. And then I just took some gray paint to diffuse the bright pink flowers on the outside to make it look just a little bit more rustic and neutral. Then I took a little Dollar Tree wood ornament. You could also use their unfinished wood signs. I stained it dark walnut by Minwax, and then I cut out this little decal on my Cricut. It's a free cut file. I will link it down below so that it looks like a little carrot patch. Then I just took some reindeer moss from Dollar Tree and covered the whole bottom of the little fairy garden to make it look like grass in a little carrot patch. And then I took some of these infamous Dollar Tree carrots, they have them every year, and I just arranged them in a little vignette, I guess. And then I just took some hot glue to stick them down so that they would stay where I wanted them to. Like I said, I was really proud with how that turned out. I was really thrown for a loop when Courtney at Creative on the Cheap put that in my box. But that whole thing was fun. We've got a ton of different videos. I will link this particular one down below if you want to check it out and see the other projects that came out of that box. If you're more of a neutral Easter decor person, this is your project. These Ray Dunn Easter egg garlands are so fun to make. You just need some unfinished wood beads as well as some of these Easter eggs. The first step is to take a drill and create the holes that you're going to need to string your garland. So I just found a drill bit that was the right size for my needle and thread to fit through, and I carefully went through and drilled a hole in the top and the bottom. Now, I learned that by using this little egg crate, it made it a lot easier to stabilize things as I went through to drill my holes. So I went through, drilled the top and bottom holes in all of mine, and then they were ready to be strung. Then I just took some brown thread and created a pattern that I liked between each of the eggs with my unfinished wood beads, and then I continued on until my garland was as long as I wanted it to be. My last step, and this is also optional if you're not a Ray Dunn fan, is I just used the font Amatic, which is a free download, and I cut out different Easter words. So spring, bloom, Easter, and I just added those to my little Easter eggs, and this looks really cute on an Easter display. It also looks really nice on tiered trays. You could do a lot of different things with this option. These pastel strands were one of the most popular ones on my channel last year, and I love them. So this process is very similar to the garland, where you're going to take those Easter tree ornaments and just pop off the ends. And then I used about 6 or so little eggs, strung them along, and then I added a tassel on one end, which I just whipped up pretty quickly. And then on the other end, I just painted some of those create your own ornaments from Dollar Tree, some different Easter colors, and strung them together. They are a nice mixture of whimsy and fun, and you can arrange them on a variety of different places and tier trays, vignettes, etc. And they're so easy and cheap to make. This one is an oldie but a goodie. I made this my first year that I had a channel, and I use this. I break it out every year. I love this buffalo check bunny jar. It's a Dollar Tree project. So this ball jar I grabbed from the Dollar Tree, and I started by painting the whole thing with some white Waverly chalk paint. Then I grabbed some apple barrel paint. You can also use purple chalk paint, but this is just what I had on hand. These are the 2 colors that I used, and one of these little ceramic unfinished bunnies from Dollar Tree. So I used some pliers to pull off the little hanger, because these are actually little ornaments. So I got that off the top, and then I used some E6000 to glue my bunny to the lid of the jar. Now, I got a little overzealous and started doing things too fast, so you're going to want to let it dry, the E6000, before you do too much painting. But then I took my acrylic paint and I painted both the outside rim as well as my lid and my bunny. As you can see, it's sliding, so let your E6000 dry and don't be impatient like me. So then once that was all painted, it was time for the buffalo check. So this is the same gist as every other buffalo check we're painting in this video. You first want to do your vertical stripes, so I went around, spaced it out, taped everything off vertically, and then I went through with my light purple and painted those vertical stripes. Once those were painted and dry, I peeled off my tape and I put it to the side because you're going to need it later. And then I repeated the same step horizontally with some more painter's tape. Once you tape that, you're going to replace your painter's tape and then paint those squares with some dark purple, because that's where your lines overlap. Once everything's done, peel off your tape, and then I just went through with some sandpaper, sanded on the letters, the edges, and made it look nice and rustic. Then you just pop your lid back on and you're good to go. I love how cute this is and that it's a Dollar Tree DIY. Speaking of Dollar Tree DIYs, from that same oldie but goodie video is this Peeps Bucket. So did you know that you can use nail polish remover and get these words off of metal things from Dollar Tree? So I removed the Flower and Gardens letters, and then I grabbed some bunny little headbands, and I thought I could definitely use these little bunny shapes. And I just used some pliers to pop them off, and then if you flip them around, you just see their cute little tushes versus those eyes. So I just took some hot glue and glued them around the bucket in a pattern. Then I had this really cute Peeps inspired little basket. I added some greenery, put it next to my thrifted bunny, and voila. We'll keep trucking with the Dollar Tree DIYs. This one is a neutral one again, and I created this by using one of these tinsel bunny heads that they have every year. So the first step is to dismantle this because all of that fluff and stuff I don't want for this look, so I cut it all off and I'm really interested in the plastic little shape that's underneath. Once I uncover that, I took some scrap fabric that I had in black and white buffalo check, trimmed it to the size, and then started gluing it around. You will have to trim a little bit to get everything to lay down, kind of like a present, but once you do, it will wrap around your bunny head, and you just want to make sure that it's pulled tight enough that when you flip it over, you actually can see that it's a bunny head versus it looking like a blob. Then cut off any excess, and then I decided to give it a little bow and make it a girl bunny just because that helped clean up that little area between the ears. My last step was to take some Dollar Tree burlap ribbon, cut out the inner parts of the ears and hot glue it down to finish off the rustic look, and then add a little bit of jute twine to the back so that I could hang it if I wanted to. This little bunny head is really cute on a table like this, or you can hang it up on the wall and it goes really well with that welcome sign that I shared off the top. All right, we are on to project 11. If you're still with me, put a bunny or an Easter egg or a heart or something in the comments to let me know. We are gonna do some of these Farmhouse books. You need some Dollar Tree books, some stamps, some jute twine, ribbon, and ink for your stamps. So to create these books, I start by getting rid of the cover of the soft cover books and then painting the spines with just a little bit of Waverly chalk paint and white, as well as a little bit on the top like cover page to make it a little bit weathered and crinkly. Then I took some buffalo check ribbon and stretched around the outside and hot glued it down just so my books stayed together, and this gave it kind of a cute farmhouse look. Then after that was all set, I added some jute twine just to give a little bit of texture to that side of the books. And then my last step was to add the saying. You can add whatever you want, but for Easter, I decided to do "He is risen." And I like to align everything to the left, just so then I know that all my letters are going to line up. The stamp set that I'm using, as well as the ink pad, came from Michael's. I will link it down below. This next one is right on inspired for the way that I did it, but you could do whatever font that you want. And to make this, you just need however many letters you have of these little Dollar Tree ceramic eggs. So I painted all of mine white with some chalk paint, and then I used the font The Skinny, which matches the Ray Dunn font, which is a free download, and cut that out on my Cricut. Now you could absolutely do the same thing with some Dollar Tree stickers, so if you don't have a vinyl cutter, no problem. You can use whatever font. You could use some of those rub-on transfers as well. I ended up using some transfer tape for my vinyl, and then I cut them all apart so each letter was on its own piece, and then I applied it to my 5 eggs. I went with these Dollar Tree ceramic eggs because they sit up like this, and that was the goal, is to have them sit and spell out something. So you can go through and, line them up or put them on a shelf or do whatever you would like to do. I used the ones before it to line up the subsequent letters just so then you didn't have them all over the place. And then to finish off the display, I just added some Dollar Tree carrot. Up next is another buffalo check project, shocker, but this door hanger is super easy to put together with Dollar Tree supplies. I did 2 egg yard stakes, a wood bunny, a little bunny tail, and then their galvanized metal words. I ended up using one that said welcome. So the first thing I did was break apart my little yard stakes. I had 2 of them, and don't go too crazy breaking it apart because you'll need these later for assembly, and you're going to use the back of your eggs for your buffalo check. I've drilled this technique through this whole video, so we're just going to fly through this. This is the video that explains it really slowly though, so I will link the original video so you can check that out if you're interested. Once you've got 2 painted buffalo check eggs, then you could stain your bunny. Dollar Tree has different sizes and different shapes of wood, unfinished wood bunnies every year. Then I took those sticks that I had left over to put the eggs on either side, and then I covered the middle with my little stained bunny, added a cute little tail as well as welcome with some hot glue, finished off the look with a bow, and then added 2 holes at the top so that I could hang it. This looks so cute on our white doors in our house, and you wouldn't guess that this came from Dollar Tree. Up next is another stained and buffalo sign, but this one is a smaller one. This is a circle unfinished sign as well as one of those do-it-yourself ornaments. And to finish off the other piece, I just grabbed some little scrapbook paper. This came from the Target dollar spot, but you could use whatever scrapbook paper you have. I traced my little carrot and I cut it out in some black and white buffalo check. And you could do this same process for any of the projects that I showed you how to paint the buffalo check if you don't want to paint it. Just took a little Mod Podge, spread it around on the wood, and then stuck my scrapbook paper on, and then added a little bit of jute twine just to give it a little bit of texture. Once that was done, I just added a cute little Cricut decal to my sign. This is a free cut file, which I will link for you. And then I hot glued my little carrot to the sign, and voila. Up next is another variation of those cute ornaments and another idea you could use those for. So these signs are really easy to make over with the same nail polish remover trick. I removed all of the world's best teacher verbiage from these blocks so that I had just plain blocks to go with. Then I used some of my little ornaments that I painted with Buffalo Check the Technique, and I just glued them onto the sign. It made a really cute set of 3 signs that I can display in my house, and it's another variation. You could also stain them and put them on there, paint them white, or you could paint them just a solid color. Here's another super easy idea that you could do for decor that fits really well with the farmhouse vibe. You could get an unfinished wood cutout of a bunny or an Easter egg, but the bunny works really well with this tail. I stained it with dark walnut stain from Minwax, and then I added this cute little kid's tail. It's a lot bigger than the one I used on the sign, and it is the perfect size for this. It just looks like a bunny is kind of hiding, or you can see their backside. Up next is another garland for you. This one is buffalo check and carrots. And so this process came from just one of these glitter signs. I pulled off the eggs and used the back to paint them buffalo check. You could easily use scrapbook paper as well, or you could paint them whatever color goes with your decor. Once I had my white base coat, I went through and did my buffalo check painting technique, as I've shown a ton of times on this video. Then once I had all of those painted, I went through with a drill and just drilled a quick hole in the top. I ended up actually doing 2 holes so that the piece just laid nicely and flat on the garland. And then I finished off the look by putting everything on some jute twine and tying on some of those Dollar Tree carrots. I buy so many packs of those every year because they're all over my house and they're really good quality for $1 and they're a perfect size. I hang this one in my bathroom every year from this shelf, and I absolutely love it. All right, we are coming in towards the end. 2 more projects left, one being this buffalo check sign. So this one is a Happy Easter sign as well as a bunny sign with 2 carrots that I've seen Dollar Tree have every year. I start with this Easter egg sign and I flip it over and do my buffalo check painting technique. Once that's painted, it is so easy. I disassembled the other sign, glued on the bunny head, and that was it. And I just added a little bit of jute twine to hang it up so it could go in my wreath, and it was done. one is also a Dollar Tree DIY, and it is super simple, but it looks so high-end. So here are the supplies that I used. I actually ended up swapping out that bunny little ceramic piece for eggs, and you'll see why in a minute. So the first thing I did was take my 2 plastic little mason jars and hot glued them to my little candlesticks. Once that hot glue cured, I added some painter's tape so that I could paint the bottom section of the little mason jar contraption I made with white paint. So I went through and painted both. I had a little bit of an issue with my hot glue sticking, but the second time it was fine. And then I took some jute twine and wrapped it around the base of those to give that a little bit of texture. This is what it looked like when I was done, and I hot glued along the way. Then to complete the look, I added some reindeer moss inside of the little mason jars, as well as a singular Dollar Tree egg. I ended up going with the purple and the blue for this look. Then I added the lids, and my final touch was to add 2 bows with some buffalo check ribbon to finish it off and have them match my house. And last but not least, we are going to do another variation of this garland that I showed you before. This time we're going to stain the beads. And this is great because you can stain beads, you can put them in dye, you could paint them. So you could really customize this to your home decor. I wanted to have a set with dark wood, so it would go in one room of my house, and then I wanted one with the unfinished beads as well. So I went through and just stained some of the same beads from Michael's, and then I followed the same process with the Easter eggs that I got from Walmart for under $2 for a dozen, and I ended up going through and drilling the holes for all of them. Then I went through and strung all of my beads as well as my eggs, and then I added tassels to the end. Another idea is you could do variations of both the stained beads as well as the unfinished beads. I added a little egg to the end of this strand, added the words hip hop in the skinny font, and that is another variation of the Easter egg garland that you could do.
Thanks so much for watching. Let me know your favorite down in the comments below. Also, a huge thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. As a reminder, the first 1,000 people to click the link down in the description box as well as in the comments will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium, so you can check out and see if that's a good fit for you. Also, if you're new to my channel, be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss a future Whiskey and Whit video, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye!